Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we really get into a topic, digging into the sources you've shared with us, trying to properly understand it together.
And today, we're stepping into the world of Buddhist scripture. We've got these two really fascinating interconnected stories. They're from the Sappadāsattheravatthu.
Right, and they explore these moments of, well, intense spiritual crisis, but also these unexpected flashes of awakening.
Exactly. And what's great is we have the sources in a few different forms: Markdown, PDF, plain text. Gives us slightly different views on the same core narrative, which is always interesting.
Yeah, it helps you see the nuances.
Yeah.
So the two main accounts we're looking at.
Well, the first is about a monk, just completely disillusioned, who decides he wants to die and actually tries to get a snake to bite him.
And then the second one involves another monk who's literally about to take his own life with a razor, but right at that critical point, he attains enlightenment.
Quite dramatic, both of them.
Absolutely. It really makes you ask, what can these ancient tales teach us about despair, about the path to enlightenment, and how can transformation happen in such, well, surprising ways?
Definitely food for thought.
So let's start with that first monk in Savatthi. He's really hit rock bottom, feels monastic life isn't working, and is actively looking for a way out, a permanent way out.
Right. And then, kind of coincidentally, it seems at first, some other monks find a snake. In the fire hall, I think it was.
Yeah, they managed to trap it in some kind of pot or container. Their plan is just to get rid of it, take it away somewhere safe.
But then this disillusioned monk hears about it, and he goes and asks them for the snake.
His intention is incredibly blunt. He tells them, give it to me, I want it to bite me so I can die. It's just stark.
It really is. And what happens next is just bizarre. He tries everything to get bitten, puts his hand in the container.
He even, according to the text, pries open the snake's mouth and tries to stick his finger inside.
Yeah, actively trying to provoke it, and yet nothing. The snake just refuses to bite him.
It's almost comical if it weren't so tragic. He just gives up, figures it must be a harmless house snake, and walks off, completely bewildered, presumably.
While the other monks are probably standing there thinking, house snake, we just wrestled a massive, angry cobra into that pot.
Right. They described it as hissing and difficult to catch, so the contrast is huge. He just cannot understand why he wasn't bitten.
He wanted death, offered himself up, and this creature, dangerous to others, just wouldn't oblige.
So what's the explanation? It feels like there has to be more to it.
There is. But the explanation actually comes later. When the Buddha is discussing the second monk's story, he reveals the reason the snake didn't bite.
Okay, connecting the two.
Exactly. The Buddha explains that the snake, in a previous life, had been that monk's servant.
Ah, a past life connection.
Yes. And because of that deep karmic bond, the snake was simply incapable of harming its former master, even though the monk was inviting it.
Wow, so it wasn't chance at all. It was this deep-seated connection preventing the act. That really changes how you see it. It makes you think about, all the unseen connections from the past influencing the present.
Absolutely. It adds a whole other layer.
Okay, so that's the first story, with this past life twist. Now, shifting gears to the second monk, the setting is much more mundane, initially anyway.
Right. A barber is at the monastery doing his rounds, shaving the monks' heads. His razors are just lying there on the ground nearby.
And this second monk, clearly also in a state of deep distress, maybe similar despair, sees one of the razors.
He picks it up, holds it to his own throat. His intention is the same as the first monk's, really to end his life, to cut his suffering short.
But then right there, razor against his skin, in that absolute crisis moment, something shifts internally.
He starts reflecting. Specifically, he reflects on his life since becoming a monk, on his conduct, his virtue. He sees it in his mind's eye as completely pure, immaculate.
And this reflection isn't just a passing thought.
Yeah.
It triggers something powerful.
Yes. The texts say a pervasive joy, P.T., arises throughout his entire body. It's like the darkness is instantly dispelled by this remembrance of his own goodness, his own efforts on the path.
That's amazing. From the brink of suicide to overwhelming joy.
And he doesn't stop there. He takes that energy, that joy, and uses it. He channels it into insight, meditation, vipassana.
Focusing his mind.
Exactly. And in that state, building on that foundation of joy and reflection, he attains arahantship, full enlightenment, right then and there.
Just like that, with the razor still practically at his throat?
Apparently so. Along with Padasambhita, the analytical knowledges that come with enlightenment. It's an incredibly sudden and profound turnaround.
So he goes from wanting to die to being fully liberated. He then goes back to the other monks.
Yes, still holding the razor, which must have been quite a sight. He explains what he'd intended to do.
And what he realized instead.
Right. He tells them essentially, I was going to cut my throat with this physical razor, but I don't need it anymore. Because, he says, I've used the razor of wisdom to cut through all the defilements, all the greed, hatred, delusion that were causing his suffering in the first place.
That's quite a statement. What did the other monks make of this?
They were, understandably, amazed, maybe a bit skeptical. They reported the whole thing to the Buddha. Can this really happen?
And the Buddha confirms it.
He does. He states clearly that Kesavas, those who have destroyed all defilements, the arhants, they don't intentionally take their own lives. Their inner conflict is resolved. So yes, it was genuine enlightenment.
Okay, so this naturally leads to more questions from the monks. They're trying to piece it all together.
Exactly. They asked the Buddha, if this guy had the potential for enlightenment all along, why was he so despairing just moments before? What actually caused the enlightenment at that specific instant?
And they also wanted to circle back to the first story, right? The snake.
Yes, they ask again. And why didn't that snake bite the other monk?
So the Buddha reiterates the past life explanation for the snake, the servant connection, that ties the two main stories together through karma.
Right. But then, to explain the second monk's state, why he was despairing, but also why he could achieve enlightenment, so suddenly the Buddha tells another story, a flashback, essentially.
Ah, okay. More context. Where does this one come from?
From a much earlier time, the era of the Kassapa Buddha. It involves another monk.
Another dissatisfied monk seems to be a theme.
It does. This monk had been a devoted layperson, then ordained, but later, became unhappy with the monastic life. He talks to a fellow monk about it.
And what does the friend say?
Initially, the friend tries to talk him out of leaving. Says, look, life is difficult. It has all these problems. Stick with the practice. Sounds like good advice.
Seems supportive.
Yes. But then the dissatisfied monk goes to wash his robes at a pond, and the friend is there too. The dissatisfied monk says, okay, I'm definitely leaving. I'm going to give away these robes.
And this is where it gets interesting.
Exactly. The helpful friend suddenly thinks, ooh, free robes. Greed arises in his mind.
Oh, dear.
And driven by that greed, he completely changes his tune. He starts praising lay life, talking about how wonderful it is, hoping the first monk will leave so he can get the robes.
Wow. That's quite a switch. Did the dissatisfied monk fall for it?
No, he saw right through it. He recognized the greed motivating his friend's sudden shift in advice.
And how did that affect him?
In a really unexpected way. Seeing his friend's unwholesome state of mind actually made his own mind firm. It solidified his resolve not to leave. The friend's bad advice, born of greed, ironically kept him in the ropes.
That's fascinating. So how does this connect back to the monk with the razor?
The Buddha explains that the monk with the razor was the helpful, greedy friend from that past life story.
So his despair in this life
Was the karmic result of vipaka, of having discouraged that other monk back in Kassapa Buddha's time, trying to make him dissatisfied for selfish reasons. Karma catching up.
But wait, if he created that negative karma, how did he achieve enlightenment?
Good question, because although he acted badly in that instance, he'd also practiced diligently as a monk for a very, very long time. During that Kassapa Buddha era, the text says 20,000 years.
20,000 years.
An immense period. And that sustained positive practice became what's called an upanaya, a strong supporting condition for his enlightenment in this current life.
So both the negative action causing the despair and the massive positive practice creating the potential for awakening were playing out.
Precisely. It shows how complex karma is. Past actions, both good and bad, ripen and create the conditions for our present experiences, including the potential for liberation.
That clarifies a lot. So the monks then had another question, right, about the speed.
Yes. They were still amazed that arahantship could happen so quickly. Like, in the instant he held the razor there. Is that really possible? They asked.
And the Buddha said yes.
Emphatically yes. He used an analogy like a strong man flexing his arm, or like someone's foot barely leaving the ground before they reach their destination. If the conditions are right and the effort is strong, enlightenment can be instantaneous.
It's about the intensity of the effort and the ripeness of the mind, not necessarily the duration.
Exactly. He contrasted it with someone lazy or slothful, living for 100 years. That long life, the Buddha said, is worth less than a single moment in the life of someone who is truly striving, truly putting in the effort.
He really emphasized the quality of effort over just, well, existing.
Definitely. He recited a verse to drive the point home and explain the terms. Kusito. That means someone lazy, overcome by unwholesome thoughts like sensual desire, ill will, harmfulness.
Mind clouded, basically.
Right. And Hanavirio, lacking energy, lacking effort,
So the opposite of that.
is Virya Arabato Daha, the firm, strong effort of someone capable of developing deep states of meditation, the shanas. It's that kind of powerful, focused energy that makes rapid progress possible.
And the impact of this teaching on the monks listening.
The text says many of them attained various stages of awakening right then and there, like stream entry, the first major step. So the teaching itself was transformative.
So wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways from weaving these stories together?
I think one key thing is just how unpredictable the spiritual journey can be. Enlightenment doesn't always follow a neat linear path. It can arise in the most unexpected, even darkest moments.
Yeah, like the brink of suicide. And the power of reflection seems crucial too. That moment of remembering his purity completely changed the second monk's trajectory.
Absolutely. Intention and reflection are incredibly potent, and of course the whole theme of karma actions having consequences across lifetimes, but also how sustained positive effort builds this foundation, this potential for future awakening.
That interplay between past negative actions causing present suffering and past positive actions creating the conditions to overcome that suffering, it's really complex and quite profound.
It really is. The image of the snake refusing to bite and the razor turning into the razor of wisdom, there's such striking metaphors for these deep processes.
Definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. So maybe a final thought for you, our listener. Consider those moments in your own life. Times of intense struggle, maybe confusion, or even unexpected shifts in perspective.
Yeah. How might these ancient stories, this idea of hidden connections, sudden insight, and the power of your own intention and past efforts,
Hmm.
how might that give you a new way to look at your own experiences and the potential for change that might be waiting just beneath the surface, even when things feel really tough?